happens when we do that.
Okay.
And I cannot see on my phone whether we go live or not. So.
Oh.
Okay, I think we're live. Wonderful. Liz, on a
Hi.
Saturday, on a hot Saturday in Normandy. And here I sit nicely cool in my office. Welcome again. Liz is again in her school, and she's going to introduce us to Uranie, her third horse.
Yep.
And I am excited. We're going to talk a little bit about paradigms today and about all kinds of things. So Liz, it's up to you.
Okay, well, hello again. Yes, Saturday here, the 3rd, is it 3rd of August already? Oh my goodness. With my son, again, Ross, who's helping me out today. Now, Ross's role in the business is that he does a lot of the tech work. Being a young person, he understands that far better than I do. So he's been very, very helpful with all of that. But yes, today we're here to present the 3rd and final of my horses, though we will be presenting you Gerda as well. So Gerda is a mini Shetland pony who actually came originally, Monique, from Holland. So we will be telling her story, but she's going to be interesting for anyone who has horses suffering from sweet itch, because she's been my sort of sweet itch project. And I think I found now a sort of winning formula for her. So we will present her as well. And she's just so cute. Anyway, so we're going to now switch this. It's very hard to see because there we go. It's all in the sun. But this is Uranie. So Uranie is an 11-year-old Selle Français, and I met her about 4 years ago, 7, 8, 9, 10, yes, 4 years ago. My maths are so wonderful. And I was called into her because though she was competing relatively successfully, she could not maintain her canters, in that she cross-cantered all the time. So on the right lead in front and the left lead behind. And no matter what the rider tried, that was just how she cantered. But of course, that limited how much she could do as far as jumping was concerned. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a minute again. But we're going to look again at this differential between the ulna and the stifle. Now, she is the most pronounced of my horses. You can really see that she's very deep chested, so she's quite long from the withers down to the chest. And she's also, but she's very, very short from the elbow down to the front foot, compared, if you look at her stifle, from the stifle down to the bottom of the back foot. So there's quite a difference. Now, as a jumping horse, this is quite nice because there's a lot of rebound that can happen in that chest as the horse approaches the fence. As we all know, the horse initiates the jump from his forelimbs pretty much as he would if he was going to rear. In this case, she was going to rear, and then brings the hind limbs forward to land and propel the whole lot of the body in a bascule up and over the fence. So as far as her jumping potential is concerned, her way of being built is not a bad thing. And if you look at her top line, once again, you've got a nice balanced top line that would make any rider feel quite confident that this is not a bad horse to be sitting on. What I also would like you to really look at in this horse, and again, we're looking at a horse that's not moving. She's static. All of her weight is standing on all 4 of her feet and nothing's moving. But imagine this weight at a trot or a canter, and all of a sudden, everything shifts forward. So that huge, great big thoracic cage that is now, that is there to protect all of her major organs is now swinging forward with velocity. So the horse will seek to balance itself. Now she's downhill because her bottom line is going downhill, but anyone looking at the top line would say, but she's not downhill. She's absolutely fine. But if you look at what's happening below, you will see that those extremely powerful hind legs will be pushing an awful lot of weight in the downward position. And where the horse will seek her balance is where she's holding her head and neck right now. That's where she likes to be. That's comfortable. So when we start trying to lower their necks and then tuck their noses in fact, and get even lower, this all becomes very complicated for the horse, because we're now adding huge amounts of downward pressure to what is already going down. And then, of course, a lot of us have been taught throughout the years, especially you dressage riders out there, this will be very familiar to you: forward, 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 more leg, forward, forward, forward. So this horse was struggling to make steps that were big enough, because her steps in front were teensy wincy wincy, because she was trying to make teeny weeny tiny steps in front so that she didn't fall flat on her nose. She was also ridden in draw reins, which we're just about getting rid now of. There's just a tiny little residual, and I will bring you up to her here. So the residual of the draw reins is right here. So this little dip here occurs when the horse's trapezius muscle is not being used correctly. And then this bit here, which you can just still see a little bit right here, it's all going away now, but this was much bigger. So this was very big and this was very sunk. So you had this sort of S shape. And that comes from a very heavy-handed rider who uses their hands to get the horse on the bit, which is a term we don't use. I've banned that from our particular vocabulary, and I will explain that why in the future. But if you're very heavy-handed, or you do tend to use any gadgets such as draw reins, the horse will continuously seek to fight the draw rein, even if it's on very loose. So a lot of my riders have said to me, oh, but I only have it on for security, or I only have it on very loose. But the horse, if it meets that pressure, will still try to rise up against it. And that's where you get this development of these very thick upper crests. So anyway, the problem so when I finally got to see her in the beginning, and I'm going to just switch now because I can talk to you directly. We've had a nice look at her. So when I first started to work with her, what I really noticed is that she was so on her forehand, and then being made to rush around at 100 miles an hour, because the reason they were doing this is they thought that the faster she went, the bigger a step she would make behind, because people have been taught that as the hind limb moves forward and the hind foot matches what's going on in front. So as the front foot leaves the ground, the hind foot actually steps into the footstep created by the front foot, that means that the horse is engaged, the hindquarters. Well, this is one of these paradigms that we are here to bust today, because that is not the case. Just because the horse is being rushed off its feet and it's making bigger steps, and yes, absolutely, if she's shortening in front, it won't take her long to start stepping on herself from behind, which could, to the uneducated trainer, look like she is doing what the books say, which is she's now engaged her hindquarters, but she has not. So we will talk about how horses do engage their hindquarters, not today because we don't have the time, but just again to start to debunk a few of these. So what had happened to this poor horse is that she was very, very heavy on her forehand, and she started to float behind. So if you can think of a canoe in the water with a lot of weight in front, all of a sudden the back end starts to lift out of the water. Well, the same thing happens with horses. And what she started to attempt to do was to really close down the muscles of her lumbar spine. So we're going to go back and look at her again. Hang on, if I can get this to work. It's very hard because the sun is shining. There we go. Okay, so this part of her back right here. Hi, sweetie. I'm just going to touch you, my darling. So right here is all smooth now. Can you see? It's absolutely smooth. It's a beautiful nice, smooth. But what it used to look like was I would get to about here and bumps would start to emerge. Big bumps, big, solid, as though the bones were actually popping out. And a lot of people, osteopaths and things like that, will tell you that the horse's back is out, or that their cervical, but sorry, their lumbar spine is out. And they're right, it is. But I don't know how much we as human beings can do to get that back into shape forcibly. We need to try to convince the horse's system to do it itself. And I used a lot of Masterson work to do that with this horse, the body work from Masterson, which is a fantastic way of dealing with it. And of course, my own work, which was the balancing work. Anyway, she was very tight through here because she kept on trying to tighten those muscles to stabilize her hind end. And that is why she was struggling to be able to canter. So we slowed. The first thing I had to teach her, which was quite a feat because her brain was so determined to gallop at 100 miles an hour, or, you know, her brain was like a mouse on a wheel. You know, it was like the minute you got her into the school, she was like, "Arr." So I slowed everything down. And as you can tell by looking at her today, she's very calm now, very quiet, very polite horse. The other thing that had happened with Uranie is that she had shut down. She was very mentally closed. She didn't want to have any conversation with a human being. Unlike some other horses that get very aggressive, she would just blank, like her eyes would just go dead, and she would just sort of survive the hour or two that we spent with her, and then just waited for that moment when she could be free again. She at the time was also stable 23 hours out of 24, which, as you know, is very detrimental to horses' state of mind. So there were quite a few things that we needed to go over and go through with her, and it took about 6 months before I finally got the canter that we needed. And we had also, of course, involved the vets. I never ever work on a horse ever without having vet approval, because they are the people that can tell me that if there's any underlying pathologies that I need to be really, really careful with. So I don't do any Masterson's work on them. I don't do any of my work unless I'm absolutely 100% sure that the vets are happy with me to do so. And that's really important to remember. Do not call people to come out and fix your horse unless your vet has had a look first. It's that I find that really important. I mean, when I worked at the hospital, we had so many horses that came in because someone had been called in to do some work on the horse, and they hadn't understood that there was an seriously underlying cause, and they just made it worse. Anyway, 6 months on, I finally took her one day into the school, and I said to her owner, if I can't get her to canter today, I think that she's beyond help. And that was the day, and it always makes me emotional, that she cantered for the first time, united. And I burst into tears. The owner was really thrilled, and she's never looked back. So it was a really big moment for her. The reason I now have her is because the owner decided to concentrate on his younger horses. He's got quite a few of them. And as an 11-year-old, he wanted to retire her, even though she's perfectly fine. And so I bought her, and I gave her a year off. So she's just coming out of that year of learning what it is to live in a herd, because she'd never lived with other horses before. She's had her shoes removed, not because I have anything against shoes whatsoever, but just because she's not doing an awful lot of work and doesn't need them. And I hope that eventually, even in solid work, she won't need them. But if she does, they'll go back on. It all depends. You know, I'm not one of these people that says that one way is better than the other. It is always up to the horse to let us know. Roulette, for example, has got thoroughbred feet. And if I do a lot of hard work on hard ground with her, she needs shoes on. She just cannot, you know, she's barefoot at the moment because we're on soft ground in a very soft school. But the minute we start doing road work, she'll have to have her shoes back on because she just can't cope. So anyway, this leads us quite nicely into a little question that I'd like to ask everybody. And I will ask it, give you a minute to think about. So maybe Monique and I'll have a little chat while you do it. But I'd like you to think about, you know, as far as a rider is concerned, what part of the horse, I'm going to ask you two questions. I'd like you to think about what part of the horse is the most important to the rider. That's the first question. And then what part of the horse carries the rider? So we're going to give you a few minutes to think about that. Write down your answers on a piece of paper, and then you can prove to everybody that you had the right answer. So Monique, do you have any questions of about anything that I could?
No, this is amazing. So Uranie was actually stable 23 hours a day.
Yeah, she was a show horse, so she did dressage to quite a high level. And she did, which again, amazing that she was able to do that, even though she cross-cantered. Though I must say the highest levels that she achieved was when we sorted out the canter. And then she was a show jumper as well. So Normandy is known for being the show jumping capital of France. There's not many other sports available actually, whereas other parts of France will also be dedicated to eventing and you know, dressage. Dressage is quite rare around here. Dressage competitions anyway is mainly show jumping. So yeah, that's what she did, show jumping. And she was very good at it, very good at it, considering, I mean, she will be a superstar once we've, you know, put her back to work and she's really built herself back up again. She will be an absolute superstar.
So what I really hear from you time and time again
Yeah.
is that as a horse owner, as an equestrian,
Mm-hmm.
patience is one of the most important um, assets for an equestrian. To be patient with your horse, not to rush forward, not to do things because you want to do them.
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
imagine this. Okay, so imagine you've got a little child, right? You've got a little 2-year-old, and that little 2-year-old is just learning how to walk. So for us, learning how to walk, walking, we don't even think about it, right? If you're in your living room and you want something, you just get up, you walk, you go get what you want, you come back. You have total confidence walking across that room. But a 2-year-old, just learning, or a 1.5-year-old, or even a year-old, because my son started walking at a year-old, they're testing the ground. They're not confident at all. So they are going to take a step and stumble and fall over, and then they're going to pick themselves back up, and then they're going to try 2 steps and stumble and fall over. So when you're watching that young child do that, you don't turn to them and go, get up, you stupid little thing. What are you doing on the floor? Why are you down there? Don't you know how to walk? How stupid are you? Get up. You don't do that to your 2-year-old child, do you? You encourage them. You're so thrilled when they make that first step. Oh my God, you call up everybody, your mom, your husband. Oh, little Joey took his first step today. Oh my God.
You put it on Facebook.
Right, you put it on Facebook, everybody like claps, but you take a young horse out and you try to teach it to do a circle, and it can't get the concept of doing a circle. It can't get the concept. It doesn't even know why it's doing it. You know, the baby human knows why, because all the other humans are doing it. So the baby human figures, well, I guess that's what I'm supposed to do. Not only that, but I think it figures out quite quickly that it's a much easier way of getting around. So but the baby horse is not given that same consideration. So we're asking them to do things like circles, straight lines, which are not natural to horses. We're teaching them how to jump, again, not something horses go around doing by themselves. There's all sorts of things. We teach them lateral work. How often do you see a horse doing a half pass by itself in its field? Rare, if ever. So the same consideration you give to your 2-year-old child learning how to walk, or the same consideration. Now, I just had a hip operation last year and I had to learn how to walk again after my hip was replaced. And nobody came up to me and said, you know, you don't need that crutch, get on with it, you know, walk on, get faster. Why aren't you running yet? They were like, oh, take it easy. Oh, sit down, Liz. Oh, let me get you a cup of tea. So nice and wonderful. But yet we don't do that with horses. You know, I've repaired horses for people, handed them back, said you know, your horse needs a good month to 6 weeks off. I get a phone call saying, oh, my horse is lame again. All right, this is a horse that I've just put back together. And I go, oh, why? What happened? Oh, well, she was doing so well, we decided to take her hunting for 4 hours. So those are the sorts of things that, yes, you do need patience, you do need knowledge, and you also need to consider what it is you're asking this horse to do, considering also that it's not their idea. It's not their idea to be in a school doing circles at the end of a lunge line or underneath a rider or, you know, doing half pass and piaffe and passage. It's that none of that is their idea. It's all us. We that's what we want from them. So yes, a lot of consideration for the horse and patience. And if you have that, you will have a horse that will last you until it's 30 years old, not be dead, not dead as in not alive anymore, but not capable of doing anything more for you by the time it's 9 or 10 years old. You know, it's not, as I said before in one of these lives, you know, having a bad back for a horse is not normal. Having legs that blow up, not normal. Having pain in its neck, not normal. It happens because of what we do to them. So we've got to really respect those structures, respect the mentality of the horse, understand ourselves, bust some of these paradigms, and then just, you know, find more harmonious ways to deal with our animals. And they're so willing. They're so willing. But anyway, so I think that was more than a minute. So getting back to the question. Okay, I'm going to flip back to her, who's being very patient, and my son's being also very patient. Okay, so my first question was, what is the part of the horse that carries the rider? Now, I love to ask this question because most people give me all sorts of different answers. Monique, what would your answer be?
Well, we always say no feet, no horse. But that's because we've had horses that had horrible feet.
Yeah.
But for myself, when my back hurts, I can't walk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what's the part? Remember, the question is, what's the part of the horse that carries the rider? It's a bit of a trick question.
Yeah. Well, you'd think it is their back, because that's what you sit on, right? That's probably what everybody thinks. But looking at, you know, I've talked with you a few times, so I'm going to let you give the.
Okay, so when I have exactly, that's what most people say to me immediately. Well, the back of the horse carries the rider. So I say to them, okay, so if you get into your car and you sit down on the driver's seat, is it the driver's seat that gets you to the supermarket? And they go, no. So we then go, is it the wheels? Is it the engine? Is it? So no. So what carries the rider is everything, from the tip of that nose to the tip of her tail, down to her feet, up to her back. That entire structure that you can look at right now, that's what carries the rider. There's not one part alone that carries that weight and then responds to its demands. All of it has to work together. It's a lot of musculature there that has to work together to produce what we're looking for. So that's the answer to that question. Now, the second question was, what is the most important part of the horse? And that you got right, Monique. That is the feet. So it's not just the fact that the feet have to be in good health. That obviously is crucial, because the feet, the minute you've got a horse that has a problem with its foot or its leg in any kind, is not going to be rideable. or you know, it can't produce anything for you. So, but the other part that's also incredibly important, and this is again when we start to bust some of these. Sorry, you can hear my Bellum in the background calling for his girlfriend. He's very emotional right now. So the other part that is incredibly important that you have to remember is how the horse places its feet. So I'm going to just switch back to me again, so you can see my lovely sunburnt face. There we go. So it's incredibly important how they place their feet. So some of the things that we're going to talk about as we progress through this is terminology that, as I said, I don't use anymore, which is on the bit, bending, collection, all of that. And we're going to bust a few paradigms by talking about what it all means in relation to foot placement, not in relation to where the head, neck, shoulder, back, or croup is. Because the one thing that touches the ground of the horse is the feet. It's not the nose that touches the ground, it's not the belly, it's not the back, it's not the bum, it's the feet. So I say to a lot of people, and I'll demonstrate with Ross here. Hang on, I'll switch back again. So if I say to Ross, right, Ross, without moving your feet, look behind you, all the way, all the way. Okay, so Ross is now looking behind himself, but has he changed direction? So the answer is no. So now, Ross, look behind you with moving your feet. So that means you will change direction, right? So now you can see he's changed direction, and the only part of his body that can get him to change direction in the standing posture is his feet. You know, he can turn his head all the way around, almost like an owl. It's pretty supple, being a young man, but he's not changed direction. So these are, again, just we're going to be giving you little tiny bits at a time that you can start to write down and start to think about, because what we are doing is we're starting to rewire riders' brains. We're getting them to think about their horses differently. So I will come back. Okay. And one of the things you can do is go around to all your horsey friends and ask them the same questions and see what kind of answers you get. But yeah, the feet and foot placement. So foot health and foot placement, incredibly important to the rest of, well, to everything. And there we have it for today.
Well, we put in the, let me get out of gallery view. Here you go. In the comments that you were going to talk a little bit about how Nrf2 activation helped specifically Uranie.
Yes, sorry, I totally forgot about that. Yes, so all of my horses, when I became aware of Nrf2, I decided that I would test it on everyone, and each of my horses had a little bit of something that it could be helpful for. And with Uranie, I worked with her for 3 years. Then she went back to a trainer for a year and unfortunately went back to traditional methods. So when I finally bought her, which is why I bought her, because I didn't want such a beautiful horse to be completely destroyed. So I bought her, and she's had this year off to recover. And that's why I put her on the Nrf2. First of all, I knew I was going to remove her shoes, and she was slightly lame in her right shoulder. Nothing bad, nothing major, but just enough. And within 2 months of that, she was moving so much better. So, and now the lameness has disappeared. So I attribute it partly to Nrf2, of course, and then partly to the work we've been doing, and of course to the rest. I mean, she has had a lot of rest as well, but I don't think she would have come sound quite as quickly. There was nothing that the vets could pick up on other than it was just, you know, again, it was just one of those very slight things. And I didn't mention why I had put Roulette on it, and Roulette was on it because she was very touchy during her heats, to the point where you couldn't touch her flanks without, her thing is biting. Lovely. So she nips at you if there's something she's not in agreement with. So you couldn't even anywhere near her ovaries, anything of that nature. She really was very, very unhappy about you touching her. And the other thing is that she didn't like the Masterson method. Now, one of my friends that you saw and students that you saw the other day, Mary Ellen, actually worked on her, and it was the first time that she was incredibly receptive to it. And I think Mary Ellen had something to do with it, because she's got a great touch. But also I think the Nrf2 helped because she hasn't been marish with it at all. She's been great. So
Nice.
I know when she is in heat, actually.
Yeah.
I know when Urani's in
Let
heat.
me explain a little bit what Nrf2 activation is. Basically, what we're doing with Nrf2 activation, it's for all mammals. It was developed for people, but it's for all mammals. So dogs, horses, cats. But what it does, it activates the Nrf2 in the cell. And now our own body is able to create enough antioxidants to get rid of oxidative stress basically over time. So in the first 30 days, it will, on average, reduce oxidative stress by 40% in 30 days in all mammals. And that, of course, has to do then with inflammation. And if we can reduce inflammation in the whole body just by activating our own cells, a lot of things will start going better. And oxidative stress is linked to over 200 disease processes. So yeah, it helps on a lot of different things because it helps at the root cause.
Yep. No,
Yeah.
I've loved it, and I'm on it as well. And I have to say, my surgeon was so surprised at how well, because my wound was huge. I had 40 staples in my leg, so it's about 1.5 foot of open wound that healed very, very quickly. And so that was good. Yeah, it was a pretty intense operation. But hey, I can ride again. Yay!
You can ride again. Wonderful. Well, I think this was an amazing episode again.
Great, good. Well, I hope
to our next one.
A few more nuggets. Well, the next one, what are we? Probably Monday would be a good day.
Would be good. Yes. Monday is a good day. And again, the person that engages the most and leaves comments and engages with us on our on these posts in the comments and questions will earn basically a 1-hour consultation, private consultation with Liz. Which so far it's me. No, I have them.
No, of course you
share and comment and engage. Ask questions what you want to know.
Great.
Excellent.
Okay, you have a lovely end of day.
You too. Have a great weekend.
Okay. Bye.
We'll talk Monday. Bye.
Bye.